The purpose of this is to give a little bit of a dive into your background and into just questions that prospective clients or clients would have for you. First question, tell me a little bit about who you are. Just
Yeah, so Curtis Yamada. I've been a counselor for about 20 years now. It's scary to say it's been that long. I think it's probably been, off the top of my head, I almost want to say around 8 years working with military, which has been great. Started as a contract counselor, and then now being able to join the team and doing that full time, which has been a great experience.
and where do you do in-person work from?
Yeah, so I have worked around over those years. I find myself primarily working lately more in the Tri-Cities, so Poco office, which is Shaughnessy and Lougheed area, Pitt Meadows near the Harris Road, and lately the Coquitlam office, which is kind of close to the Clemson.
Yeah. So you said you've been doing this for over 20 years. That's a long time.
Yeah.
I don't know if you still remember, but I imagine you do. What was the inspiration or the passion, or how did you arrive at choosing counseling as this?
It's a great question. For me, my career path, it took me really early on. So I think as soon as grade 8, I remember wanting to be a counselor. I think we all maybe do those occupational tests and the career tests.
Yeah.
And every time it kept on coming up as counselor is one of those options. Ironically, it came up as like a power car driver or baker or almost one of the ones, but I really knew early on I wanted to be a counselor. I think a part of me always wanted to be that person to be able to help others. That was for me growing up, being the oldest of a lot of Asian family. I think we had 31 cousins. I was the oldest. So I think it defaulted to me early on in that thing. And it also just lent to my personality to want people to be help people. So I knew I was going to do some sort of care communication.
The first time you worked with the clients, is that where you really knew that this was the right career, or did it come earlier on in the study?
Yeah, ironically enough, one of the really helpful advice I got was to join a hotline, a mental health hotline. Yeah, crisis line. Thank you.
Yeah.
And that really just flamed the passion for it. Really got a lot of satisfaction out of being able to help people. And on the phone, it can be pretty tenuous, and be able to do that work sort of cemented the fact that I think I'm on the right path. And so that idea of really being able to do what you love, it's all started from that. And even after all these 2 decades, it's continued that way. That's the best part of my job, is being able to meet new people, be able to help them in whatever they're dealing with.
Yeah, and if you can work with people in crisis, that means you can really do this work.
That was one of those from a kind of a mentor growing up in early few days to my bachelor's. Somebody recommended that, and it was probably one of the best pieces of advice I've ever gotten. And it really, nothing like jumping in the deep end.
You're made for this work.
Exactly, that's what that was.
So next question is, what is counseling, and who do you think could benefit from it?
Oof, that's a broad question. I mean, for the second half of that, who could benefit? I think everybody has the potential to be able to benefit at any time. What is counseling? I find even with the clients that I have now, it could vary from person to person. I have some people, they're working on very specific issues. They want to come in, they may be dealing with some situational issue that is ever present. Great, they're coming in, they want to talk about this. And maybe they get what they need and they're off they go. I have other people there, maybe it's more chronic or more longer lasting, and they're coming in on a repeated level, and they're getting that out of what they need. So what counseling might look like for one person to the next, it could be very different, but I find my role in that isn't to dictate what person is going to be given. It's what can I do for them and meet them at their needs.
Yeah, so the common thread meets that original need you had, which is to help people, and that can look like a lot of different ways, but regardless of it, that's what you're doing.
Totally, yeah. I don't think it's necessarily as prescriptive as yes.
And what are the most common reasons that you find people gravitate to you specifically? Like, what are the most common type of clients that
over the years, I feel like either by just happenstance or just sheer luck, I've been able to deal with or be able to see a lot of different people. So I find the ones that gravitate to me, I see this even in a first session often, that there comes a point in a session where either the universe has sent us our way, or there's some reason why we've connected paths. Sometimes it's a personality fit. It just, we connect well and have that dialogue that you see flow to it. Other people, it's, they're very specific issues in the environment. Maybe it's substance use issues or relationship issues or those kind of things. And because I've been fortunate enough to have those experiences both lived and career wise, I think that's what matches people up as well.
So it's not always just necessarily the presenting issue with the population, but it could also be about the personality of the entity.
And I do see often that is that match, the goodness of fit plays, I think, such a critical role in the type of success you get out of counseling. And so it's not necessarily, the level of experience or, counselor might have 10 years or 1 year. It doesn't sometimes always matter as much as how well it matches with the client itself.
And so speaking of fit, how does a client know, or how do you know that a client is a good fit for you or vice versa? What are some things that clients internally maybe can look out for that will determine that this is a good person?
Yeah, I when I talk with a lot of clients, the first off I think of is safety and trust, right? I think those are two main factors, especially early on, to be aware of and look out for it. If you don't feel like you can trust the person I'm talking to, or you don't feel like it's safe, you're probably not going to want to be vulnerable enough to really get most of the counseling. And I often say that in my first session to be aware of that and to be able to process a little bit. Think about, how is this going for me? Is this going to work, or is this feeling uncomfortable, or totally? Yeah. And I think that's, I've seen in the past, it goes such a long way to how much work you're going to be able to do and how much change happens because of that.
And what can clients expect in a typical first session? And do they need to prepare at all, or can they just come in?
I love that question too, because I'll get some clients and they have an agenda list and they want to go from top to bottom. They'll hold their phone and go, "This is the thing." And then I have other clients and literally they'll say, "I know what we're going to talk about." And they might be a little bit apprehensive, but before we know it, an hour goes by. And so
It's really up to them.
yeah. And so I find often, how prepared you are, it almost sometimes doesn't matter as much as how much we can get into something, how much, even just vicariously, we may, take it aside, detour path in discussion. But having that dialogue, I find, is something naturally for me. I'm not just the type of counselor that's going to listen and just parrot back what you're going to say. You might have a discourse and be able to get into things, or ideally I might be able to present things in a different perspective, at least for somebody to think about it, go, "Oh, I never thought of it that way," and take that and run with it.
So that's a great segue to my next question, which is, what type of counselor are you? How would you just describe your unique counseling space?
Yeah, I think like most of our LSS counselors, we might default to cognitive behavioral therapy. I think for me, it largely depends on what the person's coming in with and maybe what they're looking for out of counseling. I get some clients who are looking for more direction. So the input, the feedback, all those kind of things. I might do a little bit more of that. Other person that is looking for more support, I'm not going to be so directive or occasional sometimes even. So what they're dealing with, what they're looking for, I think is a huge factor in what default I do a lot of CBT, but I also do EMDR and other therapies, depending on the context.
Right.
So the people I see wildly range. The modalities I use wildly range with time.
Right.
So there's family therapy, there's couples.
So the focus really is, sounds like it's listening and then adapting to.
That's, I think over the 20 years, I've been able to be fortunate enough to amalgamate a lot of different modalities and a lot of different approaches, and then pick and choose from those. And so I find it hard pressed to, say that I'm just behavioral or I'm just cognitive. I think being able to take things from everything. I often find even strategies I might use DBT or family systems therapy, those kind of things.
For a client, this comes up a lot. Like, what does progress look like, and how is it like gauged or measured or
Yeah.
stuff?
I think, when tracking progress or seeing where things are, I use the analogy sometimes it's hard to see the forest trees, and sometimes we're in it. It's hard to know if change is happening or things are getting better. Having a broader perspective, maybe take that step back. Sometimes we can see that, but how we track it might depend on the person, what they're looking for out of that. Say if it's a relationship, are we having less conflict? Great, then that's maybe a great sign. With even trauma through EMDR, we're often tracking it through like even a number scale. When I think about whatever I'm struggling with, it seems to be a little bit less. Sometimes we use that volume number. Oh, it was a 10 out of 10. Now it feels maybe it's a 7 out of 10. Yeah, we're heading in the right directions.
It's a lot of mixture, both internal and more external objectives.
Yeah, it could be very, like you said, very subjective and very idiosyncratic in that sense to go, I am feeling better. Or maybe something else is popping up and we can pivot for those issues.
What's your view of change and how healing occurs in there?
Yeah, I would love it if healing was linear. What I've often seen is sometimes it can feel like 2 steps forward, 1 steps back, or just giving the context of the week kind of thing. So I do try to take a broader perspective, and sometimes it's even lending itself to philosophies or like a Buddhist mentality of like, where does change happen? And it isn't as concrete as we want it to be sometimes. Sometimes it's even just using that, this too shall pass. It's enough to get through the moment to see that there's, the sun comes up the next day kind of thing. So I wish it was progressive in that sense. And often when we take that broader perspective, as we said before, we can start to see that. But I find even my lived experience, today's great. Tomorrow, it's not guaranteed in that sense. So
That's right. Yeah.
it can be a challenge in that sense.
And this is a common question from clients. How long does it typically take to see improvement? And what is the typical amount of sessions, like total sessions and like frequency?
I love the question. I get that in the first session. The typical duration, it's really hard to try to nail down specific, almost like a prescriptive way to be, or how this is going to come out. I tell all my clients, I should be working myself out of a job, in the sense of, if they're coming to me with a specific thing, if they're still here, even after a year or so, that might seem more to me it might seem more about me as a counselor and a clinician, that I'm not helping something that's going to fit for the client. And so I often tell people, like, this isn't something that ideally what we're struggling with is going to be something long term. We're here to create change and to make things better. If that's not happening, there's something maybe we need to address. Yeah.
So sort of also it depends on how they're coming in and how many things or how deep of a fix or healing they want.
So true. And even just the severity or just what they're struggling with, right? Like, I think of some of my clients that are dealing with some pretty heavy PTSD or CPTSD. We may not be expecting change to happen.
Yeah. Say more about CPTSD and how it's like lifelong, and it's a lifelong issue. It's something that you're not going to get overnight.
Yeah, totally. The complexity of the trauma, I find it pops up in so many areas of someone's life. So in one time we might be talking about something that happens at work, but then something else happens in their life with relationships outside of that or something. And then the trauma can influence all of that, and it comes down to other factors. So again, those kind of things, maybe areas of topics that we want to work on. So we might see change happening here, but we also need change happening there. And it can lengthen the process of counseling, not to be discouraging, but then I would hope that there's installing hope in that sense, right? This is progressing. We're seeing
So if it is a good fit and it is taking maybe longer than someone might expect, there's usually like a reason for it.
For it might be, yeah. And the question that you also posed is frequency and all those other things. There's so many other factors involved in that. Sometimes it's about time, schedules, even money, the resources, those kind of things can really influence that. And I never wanted to be the person to force counseling on somebody. So I wanted to be natural and work for their lives and all those other things that they may be having to jump.
You end up getting collaborative.
Yeah, exactly.
When you're not doing counseling, what do you like to do? What are your hobbies?
Yeah, it's a never going question. I feel like I'm always trying something new. A lot of time defaulting to family. So I have 2 kids of my own. Even that just keeps me pretty busy, but I find myself doing a lot more creative aspects. So doing some art, those kind of things. Less, I probably want to have more time to be able to do. I find as I'm getting older, it's getting more important to get more active. That is something I continue to work in progress, but between family, friends, spending quality time. For lately, it's us having experiences. So going camping, doing trips.
So even at home, you're adaptive because you're doing the things that they do. So that's it for my questions. Are there any questions that come up for you a lot that we didn't get to cover?
I think a lot of the time people, particularly people that don't, I've never had the experience of counseling. Some of the things that they're uncertain about, the level of anxiety, the worry about what we're going to get into, that first step can be pretty daunting. And so one of the things I do try to do, even in the first session, is be able to connect to them on a personal level. Like, even those questions that we talked about is often the things that we're asking our own clients, right? Mm-hmm. What are their interests, their hobbies? What are they doing outside of just what they do for a living? So often try to answer those questions for them, or even just to be as transparent as possible as me as their counselor to answer that they have. So sometimes they're asking, what's my lived experience like? Or, have they ever had to deal with the things that they're dealing with, anxiety and depression? Mm-hmm. And I think on that level, we can all relate to that. And you might have had your own experiences of mood and those things, and stress does this to us. And so I think, again, it allows us to connect on the human.
Thank you for meeting and speaking with me. I think it allows for your written words on the profile to be expanded on and livened up a little bit. And yeah, for anyone that's watching this, if you have any more questions for Curtis, feel free to put that in the comments. And if there's enough questions, maybe we can do a round two or
Love that. That'd be awesome.